6 p.m. on Wednesday, November 13th. This is the regular monthly meeting of the Woodlands Water Agency Board of Trustees. I'll begin with a roll call. Metro Center Mud, Trustee Ron Wilson.
Here.
Trustee Walt Lashevsky.
Here.
Trustee Neil Gaynor.
Here.
Trustee Brad Hauk.
Here.
Trustee Kent Maggart.
Here.
Trustee Keith Lincoln, excuse me.
Sean Costello.
Oh, hi, Sean.
Here.
Trustee David Smith.
Here.
Trustee Hugh Connett.
Here.
Trustee Bob Lux is here. Trustee Paul Martin.
Here.
Very good. We have a quorum. We'll begin with the invocation and the pledges of allegiance. Heavenly Father, we come to you today as an assembled body. We humbly request that you bless our meeting, our community, and our nation. Help us to work diligently, always for the common good and in the best interest of those we have been elected to represent. Guide us to be insightful and prudent in our intentions, visions, plans, deliberations, decisions, and their fulfillment. Work through us to provide a spirit of welcome to all in attendance, to engage in respectful and thoughtful dialogue and discussion with understanding, wisdom, and humility. Amen.
Amen.
If you wish, prior to reciting the pledges of allegiance, please take an additional moment of silent prayer or additional reflection in the manner of your preference. Thank you. Pledges of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Good. Okay, we have no members of the public wishing to speak to us this evening. So we'll begin with agenda item 4, receive an update from Region H. Arthur Bredehoff, please. Good evening, Arthur.
Good evening, Mr. President, trustees, senior staff of Woodlands Water, and our public. Our next special meeting will be December 4th. So we'll be back at the trustee meeting either in December, if you have a December meeting, or in January to update you on Region H's meeting in December. We had no meeting in November, so that's the extent of my report.
All right, thank you very much, Arthur. Appreciate it. We have a report, an update report from San Jacinto Regional Flood Planning Group, Region 6, Miss Imelda Diaz.
Good evening, everybody.
Professional engineer extraordinaire.
Thank you. Just a quick update on the recent developments and the San Jacinto Regional Flood Planning Group and the 2024 State Flood Plan. I'll just want to pass this out because I'm going to make enough of maybe out here. I understand that some of y'all were not on the e-blast. And I didn't have enough.
Oh.
Sorry. To share. I didn't have enough. I'm sorry, we could just share, but I'm going to go through some of the highlights here as well. And the flyer is actually posted on the San Jacinto River Flood Planning Group website as well. Yeah, so as you know, the next FIF funding cycle is going to open in 2026. So to increase the number of eligible communities, the TWDB is providing an opportunity to add new projects or update currently recommended projects into the 2024 state flood plan through an amendment process. And that's what the flyer outlines. So the submittal deadline is April 1st, 2025. And the flood planning group, we need to act now. So in order to do that, we are requesting that all communities consider joining the amendment process So there's projects that you want to add or you want to update any of the ones that are currently in the floodplain. And the process for that is that the communities must submit a notice of intent by November 15th to start the process. So this can be done via an email to Freeze and Nichols. And the email should specify the name of each study or the project that is being submitted. Following the NOIs, the Freeze and Nichols is going to reach out to anybody who submitted it, and they're going to request additional details or tell you what the additional data requirements will be to be able to complete the final submission that's due on January 15th. And that submission is going to include details like the project scope, the cost estimates, and the supporting studies. So again, all of that is outlined in the flyer that you'll have. And again, the amendment approval, the deadline for the amendment is going to be on April 1st, 2025. After that, any amendments to the plan will be incorporated into the 2028 flood plan, and those projects will be eligible for future funding at that point. So again, my understanding is that the flood planning group has sent an e-blast to all the individuals that they had on their contact database. I received that list today. I didn't see a lot of your names. That's why I brought the flyers kind of last minute. So I apologize for that. They also posted the amendment, the flyers on their website, and they shared information at the Houston Galveston Area Council meeting. And let me see. So far, the only NOI that they have received from the upper watershed has been the Grimes County. So that's it I have. We are going to meet again tomorrow so we can review the plan and discuss the amendment process. And then we're going to have another follow-up meeting December 12th to track our progress and make sure that we have all of the NOIs and the packages. So with that, do you have any questions? Yes.
We had the Spring Creek project. Remember that?
Mhm.
Are we gonna submit that? I don't see anybody from the river authority here. That was a flood mitigation project and we have a study complete. So I would think that the documentations are ready to be submitted.
Certainly investigated.
Yes.
I think it's in that whole series of projects that were,
Up in Waller County.
The Water County one?
Waller, Waller,
the
Waller
whole
County.
sequence of projects on Spring Creek, which I believe is already in there, but
I
we
wouldn't
can
be-
double check.
We
on
can
that.
double check.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah,
it's
well,
not on
if
there.
not,
No,
then
that certainly
Yeah.
will.
Those depend, November the 15th.
Correct, November 15th, any new projects that you want to add, or if there's one already there that was a study, that we can now move it up to an actual project, we can change the recommended project at
Yeah,
that point as
it's
well.
in as a study, and so I've been looking at this as well.
Uh-huh,
And I want to have conversations with the engineer and instructor to identify if it's something, which I agree, I think it should be as well, if the time is right. I know before we missed the last one, but I believe we can get this one.
Great. Good
It's all
catch,
of them.
again, this is just a really quick email, just this is a study that we want to add. Send it to Fraser and Nichols, send it to me.
It's a fair branch.
I don't think so.
We're not at that stage yet, are we?
Not really a flood project.
So
Well,
the HCAC, what, they have committees, right? Transportation Policy Committee. So what committee, you guys talk to them? Who are you talking to?
I was not there, so I apologize. I'd have to get back to you on
Okay.
that. So that was the Houston Galveston Area Council meeting. They had one of their general
You
meetings.
don't know when you speak top board or subcommittee.
No, I'm not sure about it. I can follow up and get back.
Maybe next time.
So you want to know who?
Yeah, well, are they addressing the board of directors of the HCAC? But they have a number, they got 5 or 6 subcommittees. One of them is, I've been to Transportation Policy Committee. So.
I'll
which-
find out in
which
touch
one?
last time.
I have 2 questions. One is, how do we get on the email blast?
Yes, so I'll make sure you, if you want to be on there, I'll get you on there.
Find out on the website.
If you sign up on the website, I can give you my.
Okay.
Our website or you have a website?
No, the San Jacinto River Flood Planning Group, they have a website and you can add yourself on there as well.
Okay. And Eric, I'm surprised your comment that the Panther Creek and Bear Creek are not flood projects.
Well, we're looking at it. We will, if it's eligible to be put on and meets the criteria, we'll put it on.
I thought the whole justification was to reduce flooding on Research Forest.
It is, but it's an isolated area. It's this is looking at much larger projects. So whether or not it complies with that criteria. or not,
Okay, so it is a flood project, but it may not be a regional flood project. Okay. Just- Okay.
Questions? Again, I got the list today. I didn't see a lot of your names, so I apologize for that, but I'll make sure that you are on the list. I'm moving forward. And forward.
Thank you, Imelda.
Yeah, there's a link on their website to join the distribution list. It's right on the top. Pretty easy.
Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda, pages 1 through 14 of our meeting packets.
Chairman, I just have one item on item 6. On page 2, the bottom of item 4, the last line, it says, he noted that Montgomery does, and that's, we just should add, and Montgomery County does not have.
Got that shown? Okay. Mr. Houck? Trustee
Yeah.
Houck?
Question on item 10, page 3. It talks about Mr. Shackford present the how water is sold to the trustees in November. I didn't see that on the November agenda. Did I miss that, or was there?
It's on number
It's agenda item 11, yeah. correct.
Okay, great, thank you. My correction,
Move to accept the remainder of the items as presented.
We have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented and noted, and
I will second.
it is seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Staying, I was absent.
Okay, thank you. The motion passes. Okay. Brings us to agenda item 8. Mr. Meeks? Mr. Meeks, I was reading the Houston Chronicle today and I saw an article that it's your birthday tomorrow. And from the Woodlands Water Agency Board of Trustees, we'd like to wish you a happy birthday.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. There's 2 paybacks for Ed now. So,
It was in the Chronicle.
This is
Public information.
It's like, yeah, last time I was in the Chronicle, we're not gonna talk about that. So, report begins on page 15. Pretty standard. You may notice slight changes. We've had some staffing changes at the River Authority. So you got Chris putting this report together this month. So what I have added is on page 16 at the top, you will see the water loss now includes the FY. So it's not only the rolling 12, but it's also the fiscal year. So you can track closer along with, we budgeted for 4% and we're currently sitting at 6%. Keep in mind that is only 1 month. That's only September. We don't have October's in there. So when I continue to look at the water loss for each fiscal year, it is 3.5 to 4%. But that way we can all track it together. If next year we need to make an adjustment, we'll make an adjustment. The 0.5% from a 4 to 4.5 or 4.5 to 5, it's roughly $100,000 per 0.5%. So it's not a huge loss. A little bit more demand, it'll be covered.
That's a rolling cumulative.
The one on the left, rolling 12 is, the FY25 is just cumulative from.
Year to date.
Yeah. And I can add that on there.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure.
Besides that, I did, of course, make another change on your projects beginning on page 20. We've received more questions from various conversations with the MUDs the last few months. And so what I've done yet again is to change this spreadsheet to try to give it more information, a little bit more clarity, easier to read. So looking for your feedback over time.
Can we use lighter color, blue?
We can definitely use a lot of color. On my screen, it was one color. On here, it's too dark. So I did not print, but just sent. So I will change either the color or the font to make it easier to see. But I've tried to add in anticipated construction dates, start dates for projects, estimated budgets, so on and so forth. I've also identified under the funding source, you'll see R&R, bonds, cash. In some cases, you also see excess funds. This is so y'all can track the projects that were funded by excess funds, see where they're going in relation to budget. Just keep in mind though, excess funds are actually in R&R, right? So I'm splitting the difference here, but I'm just giving you a mechanism to track the projects through excess funds.
Good.
It's
Good
easy to
changes,
read,
yeah.
Chris. Thank you. Good job.
color.
Picky, picky, picky.
So I had a question on, page 17. Just going back to maintenance. That AC, under the 12-inch AC clamp issue that was replaced and sleeved in PVC, that is set aside for testing by the consultants.
Correct. Any AC pipe that we come across, we are still pulling a section out and we're crating it up over at wastewater plant 2, and we're letting Justin in the back know so he can work with the AC waterline condition people to actually get testing done for them.
Oh, okay. And and the next one, the contractor, Verizon, broke a water pipe. Woodlands Water Agency contract repaired it. What's the process for cost recovery?
So there's two processes when it comes to cost recovery. One is to make y'all whole because y'all fixed one of our lines. So typically how it's been done before is that Woodlands Water will get the bill from your contractor. Y'all will pay that bill, then send us an invoice plus any of your time that's related to it. And then we pay Woodlands Water or whichever mud to make y'all whole again. Then on our side, we turn it over to our risk department, who then goes after Verizon to recover the cost from us based on the bill that y'all send us.
Now that cost recovery would also include water loss, the value of that, or?
It does. When we go to Verizon, we do include water loss.
Are you any more successful than we are?
Surprisingly, so I've been with the authority for about 15 years, the first 13, 14, no. But now we have a little bulldog that's in the risk department and she doesn't let go. And so the last 3 of the 4, we have received recovery. So I'm impressed.
I need a big.
So-
I might have just hired one. Trustee, I don't know. We'll see.
Trustee Lashewski.
Yes, sir.
What is the project on the North Course?
North Course, I'm not familiar with golf. Don't shoot me.
Okay, I just got a question. Where the water comes over the spillway of Lake Woodlands and it goes down through the golf course and that creek that goes through that.
Gotcha, Panther Creek.
Yeah, that's part of Panther.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for that? The last storm we had, there's quite a few trees, I mean, massive trees that have fallen in that creek. And I think that, of course, the country club's gonna just leave them there. Is that their responsibility to take those out, or is that ours?
It's not the river authorities. I can tell you that. Outside of that, I do not know whose responsibility it is. Now, if it's in our easement, which last time I checked, we didn't have any, in that same area where it comes over, you'll see a pipeline, an aerial pipeline that goes over. That is a sewer line of ours. So if there's anything up against that, we need to go check for damage on a routine basis because you don't want it to fill. I'm not sure who takes care of that area as far as the trees.
So that's not part of San Jacinto River Authority, that once it goes over to the spillway, that it's not yours anymore.
The lake's not ours as well.
Yeah.
Talking about Lake Woodlands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Lake Woodlands is not ours. We have water rights there, but I actually do not know who owns the lake. Is it,
Woodlands.
I think it's the township. Yeah.
So, this Texas state owns rivers.
Right.
So when we get the word river and creek, does the Texas state own the creek too? Does he own Spring Creek? Do they own Panther Creek, Bear Creek? Is that, you know, the
I
differentiation?
just based on the waters of the US. So I don't, the term itself, whether it's a creek or a ditch or whatever, if there's water in there, state of Texas generally owns it.
Chance he owns it. So they technically own Panther Creek and technically own Spring Creek. Spring Creek's a big creek, I mean.
But yeah, state of Texas does.
Oh.
Now, somebody will maintain it, obviously. I just don't know who maintains it.
And, Counselor?
I think it's a bit of speculation. I mean, there's not a hard and fast rule on, what the waters are, and sometimes that can sway with the federal administration and how they designate how far up you go. So it's not just a state issue. Yeah.
State.
We need to pass a resolution renaming Spring Creek Spring River.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. I was, driving home the other night and, I don't know if there's referred to this, but there was, one of the light poles, one of those like concrete light poles on, Harper's Landing Boulevard had fallen into the ditch behind the mini dealership, by the Mercedes dealership. I don't know if it's, I mean, it's in my mud, but, yeah, I don't know who is in charge of whatever gets in the ditch. I know we're in charge of a pipe underneath the ditch.
Energy is in charge of all the lights.
Okay.
If you have all energy and
We'll do.
they might have a number.
So you can go on the Woodlands website, and that app that they had, the 311 app. And you could just take a picture of it and it'll automatically will pop up report.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
And there's number also. Yeah, it'll show exactly where you are, and they'll file a report then with integer. So 311 app that's on.
We had some, I live in an area that has a very big island and the township owns it. And I'll tell you, it's very easy to pick up the phone, tell them you want to, like I had two big dead trees in that island and they took them down within a week. So it's a very easy process to call them. So they just press you, they have a manager, they just transfer to it, they take a report.
That's
Put
great.
it-
Yeah,
put it in the report.
I've done that before. I called and they trimmed the trees the next day. So I just didn't know if it's the same thing, but awesome. Good job.
Other questions for Mr. Meeks?
Not, I have just one other item is, I know you have an agenda item related to the GRP cost and the cost of, I believe,
And
cost of
item
produced
11?
water. Last month, and that was an agenda item, we were going to talk about the review committee. We started looking more at that and we think we may have found a solution to what we were looking to do. Fortunately, we have not actually finalized that just yet. We're still working with our consultant to get those final data, so we're not going to be presenting it tonight. We're also not going to be presenting it to the review committee because we need to give it time to go through the channels of the consultant, getting their data, and then internal review as well. On top of that, we have also not spoken to the city of Conroe because they are a big player. They need the water, but they also need a payout. So before we can actually have any worthwhile discussions, we need to talk to the city of Conroe first. So just,
Nice. So you have this 2023 GRP rate assessment.
right.
And that's what you're talking about. I mean, you presented it in the last GRP review thing.
No, we did not present that. That was actually presented several months ago. if I'm not mistaken. It was. And that what he's talking about is what I call a GRP special rate assessment. That means basically the plan is here, general cost is this. If you want additional water above your allocation, this is how much more you pay so that everybody else does not pay more for you getting more water. And so that's one item that we ran the traps on just to see if it was feasible to give additional people water like the city of Conroe and others. So, and if y'all didn't need more water, y'all didn't have to pay for it. So
What are the two muds that are requesting water? What were those numbers?
Mud 89 is the one that was approved at the last mud meeting, or last review committee meeting. It may get a little bit confusing because Mud 89 is acting on the behalf of not only Mud 89, but also 88 and Spring Creek Utility District.
They're all done right.
Then one other that's requested water that's currently not receiving it is WC and ID number 1
WC.
and ID
Timberlake's to the ridge.
yes number 1.
Water Control and Improvement District, WCID. For one.
And so what we're looking to do is go back to something Mr. Maggard has spoken about before, is to see, and I think last time you did as well. We're trying to identify a way to increase the plant production, but not cause a rate increase. And so there's some nuances there that we can get into for hours, but once we actually have the data together, off of what we think it's going to do, we'll present it and go through.
Let me get back. You said you found a solution. What is the problem you found a solution for?
That's what I'm not ready to go into just yet.
So you got a solution, but you're not telling us what problem you've solved.
Got to give you a teaser, something to come back next month for. I'm trying to increase the plant production without having a rate increase across. Just in general terms.
As you know, years ago, I gave you a summary of how to do that.
Just keep in mind with the current way that we have been operating before, you only have two sources of revenue, which is groundwater and surface water. But if I increase surface water, then I would decrease groundwater. And so therefore, what that means is I'm making 59 cents per 1,000 gallons, but I'm spending about $1.25 a year. So therefore, based off of that way of thinking, we would have to increase the rates. But it's going to go down a path that we shouldn't be going down too far, but we think we'd have a way figured out for everybody's satisfaction.
Can you talk a little bit about this granulated activated carbon?
Sure.
How does that work? You know, the machine physically work?
I don't know, no problem. We all know Brita filters. Yeah. Charcoal activated. That's what it is. Just a big one. It's a big sponge that soaks up organics and other, let's just call them pollutants.
So how many units do you have? I'm going back to, 2 years ago, we had the tour.
Yeah, there's eight basins.
8 basins.
We usually don't always go through that tour because it's basically just a big humid building with a bunch of swimming pools, but there's 8 actual chambers that are broken up into 2 apiece. So there's 16 contact basins, if you will. So 8 total.
And you basically, you measure the use of each basin. I mean, you dial these things in, all 8 are kind of running, and then you have a way to measure when it's spent.
The main marker for those, the KPI, if you will, is total organic carbon.
You can measure that in a meter.
Yeah, measured on a constant basis. And when it starts reaching a certain point, then we know we have to take that one offline and put another one online.
And you plan 2 a quarter.
I'm sorry, I was hearing both sides. What was that, sir?
Sorry. I was saying, so it's kind of like just unscrewing the old filter and putting the new one in.
It's just valves.
I mean, it's based on a valve, like it can flow, right?
Yeah, just turn one off and open the other one and it goes into that one.
And then you clean it, or do you have to buy a new one, or?
So with that, we actually have a company come in roughly every 2 to 3 months, longer in the winter, shorter in the summer, but they come in, they pull all that old material out, that old charcoal. They take it off to Arizona and they put it in a kiln, and then they burn off as much of the organics as they can. And then they throw some new material in there every now and then. Just because eventually it gets entirely used up, and it doesn't have a shelf life, but at some point you can no longer burn out the organics. And so then you have to replace the entirety of it, which is what we have to do in 2-3 years.
It's like a full filter.
You got it.
And you plan for how many a quarter of your units? In your budget, you plan for 2 a quarter?
For a year.
4 year.
Chris, what's the raw water rate charged back to the GRP now from the lake?
Oh,
Since it's part of your cost of doing business, how much do you?
it is. I want to say it's about 52 and a half cents. Justin, do you know off the top of your head? Okay. I want to say it's 50 to 55 cents.
When it started, it was, reason I'm asking is, as I recall, initially it was 41. And I know 10 years later it's been inflation. I'm just curious on.
It's gone. It's not as high as the city of Houston is. Houston is definitely almost double.
What does energy get for their, or what do you charge energy for their cooling water?
So
Same?
raw water per the contract, all raw water sold to everybody at the same rates. So Entergy, Exxon, Chevron, grass farmers, everybody gets charged the same rate for the raw water.
Do you negotiate with energy and or how do you come up with that raw water rate?
Same way we came up with the GRP rate and the Woodlands rate. We have a rate model prepared by a consultant and put all the data on expected use and whatnot, and it pops out with that, as well as future planning for capital improvement.
So energy, you tell them, here's the number, take it or leave it from this study.
We have a contract with all them, and so they have a take or pay. So they say, I'm going to take 7 million gallons. I'm going to reserve 3. And then, so we know each year how much they're going to take. And if they don't take 7, they take 6, we still charge them for 7.
No, but how do you come up with the 51 cents? Do you negotiate with them?
No, it's all the same rate. The rate model pops out a rate and says, this is your wholesale.
So that you're in agreement, you have an agreement, whatever this rate model says out, they got to take it and they can't leave it
It is
because.
what it is.
So
And they're buying about 3 million gallons a day.
Right now, the contract with Entergy and the GRP is 7 million gallons per year. Well, it's MGD, but they are looking to renegotiate that contract because it goes into finer details. But they built a new plant when they had the old plant, and so since they decommissioned the old plant,
New gas plant.
right? So then, since they decommissioned that plant, they're looking to cut their take down.
Stuff like that. New plant's more efficient, doesn't need much cooling. Yeah, this is cooling water, right?
Cooling water, yeah. It's into Lake Lewis, I think there's, or Louisville or whatever.
To change topic, City of Houston reservation. So I noticed in that, I was reading that document and it seems to fade out at, in the 16 million gallon, it diminishes. So when you gave examples of a base rate, then you went to 16, then 19,
What document are you referring to?
the assessment,
The,
the assessment.
special rate
Yeah,
assessment.
special rate assessment.
Okay.
So after you get to 19 million gallons per day, it diminishes, it goes from, 318,000 down to 7,000, 8,000. What happens if you would take more than 19 million gallons per day out of the lake? Like, do you owe them anything or?
Yeah, you do. So right now, what we did is what you're looking at is, and the rough number's 19. So between 0 gallons and 19 MGD, that's all Lake Conroe SJRA water. That's an R3 that we own. Everything after that is in the city of Houston's 2/3 that they own. So after 19, our reservation goes down from the city of Houston, but our take goes up, which means the reservation's obviously cheaper than the take rate. So then the cost would go up itself.
And you, if you got, you haven't pulled the 22, but if you did, what would that cost in relation to, let's say, the raw water lake?
But that would take the model to look at. I don't have that off the top of my head.
But that would be a negotiated price?
No, it's the same.
So it's in the contract.
Yeah, it's a contract. We're gonna pay the set rate, whatever City of Houston says, just like Entergy, it says your rate is this, we have to pay that. All right.
Additional questions for Mr. Meeks? Hearing none, thank you, sir. We have a presentation from Corolla Engineering of Miss Mira Victor. Did I pronounce that correctly? Good. Eric, anything you want to?
We received the draft or the decision matrix as of first. We sat through and got a better understanding of what's involved with it. And then I thought it would be a good idea that we bring this presentation to the trustees to see and hear what this the process looks like. And then I think once we get through this presentation, I have some additional comments that I'd like to share as it relates to kind of how we implement this going forward, particularly on the mud level. Because there's action items from each mud that we would like to look at, and how we can address that is something that we can look at further. In addition to this, just to kind of give you a summary while I'm just handing things out. I'm going to suggest after tonight that we host an All Muds presentation so that each of the muds or can sit through the same will record it. So those that might not be able to attend will be able to see the presentation, so that we're not doing 10 more versions of this. We're doing one, it's uniform and everybody can see. So we would be looking at, I know some districts are looking at possibly not having or deferring their December meeting. Perhaps this is an alternate where we can use one of those timeframes and set up an all muds for all the muds to hear this presentation. So that'd be the direction that I would propose. With that being said, Mira is here to walk us through the presentation and the decision matrix.
Are the muds gonna hear this next week?
No.
No, okay.
This is just an overview. This is not the final or anything.
An
Let's
introduction.
go through the presentation and we'll.
Will the all mud meeting be this exact presentation?
I would propose that it is, yes. Unless there's anything that comes about tonight that we want to tweak or needs to or whatever. Yeah, except for that, I would propose that it's.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Okay. We don't have the TVs yet.
Well, thank
Our
you.
mission is to stop that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Eric. Thank you, Chair and the trustees for having me here today. Again, my name is Mira Victor and I'm with Corolla Engineers. A little bit before we begin about Corolla Engineers, we are a water farm only. That's all we do, from water rights to planning to modeling to treatment plan design to pipelines to construction. But water has been our focus. We've been in business for 91 years. A North American company. We have about 58 offices in North America. Myself, I've been with Corolla for about 20 years now. Started back in Dallas as a young engineer and then moved to Houston about 12 years ago and have been working in this region for a while. So what I wanted to talk today about is how we are going to move forward with evaluating the 4 alternatives that you guys have all seen at the water reclamation facility #1 for HRA. I apologize, some of the graphics didn't come through in this presentation here, but hopefully we can move forward. All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about the alternatives overview, give you guys the structured decision analysis overview. How are we going to evaluate or the proposed criteria, as well as then go talk through potentially the evaluation criteria, which you already have seen in your packet, and then talk through some of the next steps. So talking about the 4 alternatives we are evaluating, the first alternative is repair in place conventional activated sludge plant, which is basically finding out which processes need repair and repair them and replace them over time, over 50 years. The second alternative is replace in place conventional activated sludge, which is basically, again, taking the existing plant, taking one process area at a time and replacing it as a whole over 50 years. The third alternative is a new conventional activated sludge facility at a new site or on new land, which is again going to be very similar to what they have existing planned, but at a new location. And finally, the fourth alternative we'll be looking at is a new MBR facility, the membrane bioreactor facility, on a new site as well.
Just to clarify, new site is adjacent site.
Yes, that is correct,
Okay.
but not the existing site where the current treatment plant is.
So you'll share common facilities or replace buildings in place.
That is part of the evaluation, yes, sir. So let's talk a little bit about the structured decision process on what we are proposing we use for this project. This graphic lays out the entire process. So we begin with identifying and defining the 7 main evaluation criteria, which again, you probably have already seen. We would identify the importance for each of those criteria. Basically, how important is it to you for each criteria and weight them accordingly. Simultaneously, as I said, we define the 4 alternatives, and we would score each of those 4 alternatives against each of those criteria and sub-criteria from a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the worst and 5 being the best. We would rank each of those 4 alternatives for each of those criteria and sub-criteria, and then all that information gets inputted into this decision model. The model we use is called Criterion Decision Plus model. It takes out all the subjectivity. The model takes out the subjectivity from analysis. It's very transparent process. Once that model gets all that information, it spits out the ranked alternatives in a graphic that shows you how each alternative ranked against each of the criteria. So that's just an overview, but I'll go in a little bit more detail. So let's start with the 7 criteria. So again, I know the text is very tiny. I apologize, but I believe you.
These are in your packet.
Yeah, this evaluation criteria should already be in your packet.
Still may be done.
But we have defined 7 main criteria, and then each of those 7 criteria have further sub-criteria within themselves. And what this table graphic shows you is what those sub-criteria are, what is the description of each of the sub-criteria, meaning what are we going to be looking for each of those sub-criteria, and then the weight of those sub-criteria. Yes, sir.
Can you email all of us a copy that we can read?
Sure.
This is as small as my medicine bottles. You must have like 6 pitch.
You look, you're looking,
I can't read that either.
that's the presentation. It's in your packet
So,
also.
this is the packet. She had it out.
No, you're,
it's a trustee packet.
What do we can?
It's not much.
it may not be one of them.
Hey, David,
So,
can't see it in there.
You can't see it in there, so could you,
one question,
you know, and I can print it out, you know, off something, I can PDF. of that
it would
page.
help if you just rotate, so
Understand.
print out. Okay.
it's easy to.
We'll get it just fine.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question about these percentages. How were they developed?
These were, the sub-criteria weight were determined by us using our engineering judgment on what we have seen historically for facilities. in
So these
wastewater
were
process.
developed by Corolla,
That's
independent of
correct.
any other input.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And you all are seeing it for the first, everybody's seeing it for the first time now,
All right, thank you.
since we sent the packet.
Aaron, do you want us to let you go? Because we're not gonna,
Yeah.
I would prefer we kind of get to
and wait for questions
Yeah.
and that we want us to do.
Yes, sir. If you, because there might be questions we may answer, I may answer through the presentations. If we can hold your questions, and then I'll definitely come back if I did not answer them. All right, so once we have the criteria defined and the sub-criteria defined, how will we define what weight do we give to the main 7 criteria? And what we propose is doing a paired comparison exercise, which is again, a second sheet that I handed out on you recently right now, which is this Excel spreadsheet. And what this does is basically looks at which criteria is more important to me in selecting the alternative. So we would request that every individual that is going to be part of this process, or a group, or a functional group, or a MUD, fill out this information. So what this looks like is, let's say, for example, you're evaluating the first criteria, operability of the wastewater treatment plant versus the treatment effectiveness. Which one is more important? Let's say you enter 1. What is the importance 1 versus 3? Which one is more important to you? You answer 3. The third is operability versus constructability, and the answer is 1. And the final one example I wanted to reiterate here is, let's say if you are torn between treatment effectiveness and established technology, which one makes more sense or what is more important to you? And you can't decide whether it's 2 or 3, and you say, let me put in 2.5. That we cannot do. So that I would definitely suggest you do not do. We want true answers, whether the alternative or the criteria 2 is more important than 3, not 2.5 or 2.1 or 2.2. We need whole numbers for this exercise.
So you want us to pick one.
Yes, sir.
You don't want anything blank.
Yes. Sir.
And if it's blank, you don't count it? You
Well,
throw
if
it
it's
out?
blank, it'll just go as that item is not going to get
Should
the
be
score.
thrown out,
So it'll be
yeah.
thrown out. So again, that form, this is just showing you that if you, however we decide to do this, however this process, whoever is part of this process would fill out their name, information, the group name they belong to, and fill out the importance of those criteria.
And not to interrupt, as I asked not to, but just to give some insight, I will be covering my suggestion on this to y'all after the presentation. If you're wondering who's filling it out and how many and all that, I've got some recommendations for you to consider. How we do it.
So once we get that information, this is an example spreadsheet for another project. I have just thrown out some of the numbers. But this process, what it does is allows each participant's priorities to be heard. So this shows you what the individual on the top left in the gray bar, you can see the individual names and the criteria that are laid out and which one was more important to that each individual. What we take is we take all this data and crunch the numbers to come up with the average, mean, and median numbers, what the weight was for each of these criteria, as well as the minimum and maximum weighting that was offered by this exercise. Once we get that information, we could split that information up into different, again, this is an example where an organization took, the engineering group decided to do their own exercise of pairing and came up with these answers. The overall management, the leadership came up with their pairing operations team did the same, and so did the utilities engineering. And so this gives you an idea of what is important to each group, functional group, or a MUD, however you guys decide to split it. Gives you an idea of what the average weight is for each of the criteria and what the minimum, maximum, and the medium weight is for each of the criteria. You take all that information and gives you an overall average for the criteria as well. This is, after we get that information, as I talked about, again, I apologize for the tiny font. We would take all your result, all the criteria and the weights, and we would also rank each of the alternatives and evaluate them against that, against the criteria from a score of 1 to 5. Again, 1 being the worst and 5 being the best. How does that alternative score against each criteria? We would define what 1 to 5 means, what a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in each of the sub criteria means. That way, when we are evaluating each of the alternatives, again, there is no subjectivity in the process. We take all that information, put it in our CDP model, the Criterion Decision Plus model, and a graphic such as this would pop out at the end of the exercise. Again, this is showing you 7 alternatives, how they were ranked, with the 0 to 100% being the best score. And from this example, you can see that alternative 4 was the best alternative in this process.
The alternative 4 is referencing alternative 4 at the beginning of the slide. When you rank 1, 2, 3,
Yes.
4.
No, this is just an example.
Okay, sorry.
So we are not, all this process that I'm discussing today is just the process. We have not evaluated any of the alternatives. These are just hypothetical examples.
Thank you.
So in this example, the alternative that clearly won scored well against the most important criteria for that organization. For that organization, the most important criteria was the established technology, and the selected alternative scored the highest. And of course, eventually even met the full range of criteria. So let me talk a little bit about what happens inside the model. So the model also allows us to do sensitivity analysis to identify which alternative best meets the full range of the criteria. So let's say, for example, this is an criteria for flexibility about how flexible is the process for future upgrades. On the y-axis is 0 to 100% your weight criteria, and on your, on x-axis is the priority value from 0 to 100% weight, and your y-axis is the decision scores from 0 to 100, 101 being the highest score for that alternative. And there were 5 alternatives under this scenario that we looked at. You can see for this exercise, the weight for the flexibility criteria was selected to be 19%. So when you take 19% on the x-axis, you see that alternative 3 is the highest, the most highest about the other alternatives, which means alternative 3 was the highest ranking alternative for this particular criteria. So let's see, the question is, what happens if you cross, where the green and the blue lines cross? That is about 11%. So what that shows you, and on the left-hand side of that cross point, the green line, alternative 2 is the highest alternative ranked, which means that 11%, alternative 2 is the top ranked alternative for any weight that is less than 11%. So for example, somebody ranked this flexibility criteria as 11%, then the selected alternative would be alternative 2 and not 3. However, anything above 11%, clearly we see the blue line is the one that is the highest, which means alternative 3 would be the highest ranked alternative, regardless of what your relative importance or weight would be for the project.
Just to confirm, this is a different set of data than your previous slide.
Yes.
So you're mixing and matching an
Yeah,
example.
these are just examples because I wanted to lay out what could potentially happen Again, yes, I understand that's a little bit confusing, sir, but it was just for examples. I wanted to, because I couldn't play devil's advocate if I had just one data set and I couldn't make it work. So we do have different data sets that we pulled in to show you guys what could be done in the model. So this allows us to do what if, your scenario thinking about what would happen if the flexibility was ranked as 0 weight to 100% rate, or if we are debating between 15 and 25% rate. Again, a second example, this is again a different example. Trustee Brad, it's not the same as before, but again, wanted to show this is an example for treatment effectiveness, where let's say alternative 3 is still the highest ranked with the weight of 28%. This example shows you that alternative 3 is the highest ranked alternative, regardless of what the weighting could be, whether it's 0% or 100%. So it takes away a lot of discussion on or confusion on what would happen if my weight is 0 versus your weight is 100 or your weight is 25%. So the sensitivity analysis helps us understand and have the discussion amongst ourselves to understand which alternative would change based on the weight criteria if that changes. Does that answer your question? Again, this is the overall process. So we would define the 7 evaluation criteria, which is in your packet, define the 4 alternatives, score those alternatives against each of these criteria, put that information in the decision model to come up with the information with the ranked alternatives. So the next steps are for SGRA and stakeholders, and how Eric, you will decide to complete the paired exercise. So we understand we can get the information of which criteria is more important to you, or if you have any tweaks or comments on the criteria that is submitted to you all.
So,
Questions?
Sure. So, in your very first, just as an example of trying to get my head around, I think you said you pre-populated the weight of the criteria sub-criteria, okay? Is that up for debate, or is that just something that we're starting with?
That's our first blush. We said that's what we would start with for the sub criteria, not the main
I
criteria.
understand. And do we feel that that's the right process? I mean, or are we just gonna accept that as is and not try to land on
If
something?
you guys have questions or comments, I'm definitely would love to get that feedback, and that way we can have an open dialogue and we can explain why we thought.
It might be helpful.
Yeah.
We might get asked ourselves, or somebody might, that's just a general question. So if we could just use the very first one you have, which is in operability, right? And the left side kind of evaluation, I don't know if you can make it big enough that everyone can read it, but it basically talks about operational flexibility.
Should I have a figure?
There you go, operational flexibility, complexity of operation, staffing requirements, three very different things, all bunched into one category, which kind of struck me. And then on the right side, and you got this weighted at 30%, I think, in your deal. And then it says, does the alternative provide flexibility for operators? How complex are the operations? So those two things to me kind of almost are at different ends. So the more complex I make something, generally, it gives me more flexibility, right? And so I wouldn't know how to really answer this, because it's kind of almost cancels itself out when I think about it, because you have 2 or 3 things here in this one line. If they were all separate, I could get there. But I would just, when I read the very first one, I read through every one of them and kind of went through trying to understand, how are you actually scoring this? Like, what is the unit I'm trying to use in my mind for complexity versus operational flexibility? What is the thing that I care about in that?
So that it's a good point. So the first one, we wanted to restrict ourselves with not having 20 sub criteria. So that's one. But mainly for A, what we were looking at is how flexible and how complex is the system. So are you having to would SGRA have to hire new staff to maintain and operate this facility? Or how much training would the staff need if it's a brand new process? Or versus a new or similar process that they already are used to. So those are the questions that we would be asking. So 1 to 5 scale, we would lay out, for example, no training required at all would be 5 being the best. Versus hiring new staff, because MBR, for example, could potentially, a new process may need additional members or
Skills.
operators and skill set.
Mhm.
So we talked through those in terms of what that 1 would be, what the 2 would be, and 1 to 5 scale would be. We could break it down further
But
into
you understand what I'm
multiple.
saying? You kind of, I just got stuck right at the very beginning and was like, I don't know what's better. I want everything, but there's a cost to it. So that ultimately this kind of rolls into cost at the end of the day. If I've got to hire and train, right, then I'm now talking, and I like, you cover cost kind of way at the bottom, but that's its own thing, right?
Yeah, and we'll take your comments and definitely tweak them if that's the consensus we get.
So to me, as I read through this, and maybe this is something I just need to spend more time with, but I think if anyone's going to answer these questions, you're going to try to find out, like, what units am I thinking of? Like, just complexity is not something, it's more complex than what, right?
Yeah.
More complex than it is today. Now I start having something to compare to.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in this case, it was more complex than what they have today. And number of staff that they have today.
Well, it would be relative to the
However-
alternatives, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
Just relative to the 4 alternatives.
Would be.
Yeah.
And so my point being, so our plan is to create that 1 to 5 scale for each of the sub criteria. We are not there yet to discuss what that 1 to 5 would be or what the unit would be. For cost, it could be easy as, this range of dollars is 1 and this range of dollars is 2. For these discussions for peak flow management, do you need an EQ basin or do you need a whole new process to treat the stormwater flows? So that could be one, because we would put that as what, if you do need an entire process as well as EQ basin, that would be the worst case scenario. You do not need an EQ basin would be the best case scenario. And what comes in between are what we are defining right now as we speak, the team is.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know what you want to do with these, Eric, because I would go through each one of these word by word and really kind of grind it out personally.
Yeah, and
You
you
make
won't
it
be-
very clear, because you're going to go to people and ask them, you're going to get a dozen different answers based on what we think you mean. Because this is going to be an
So-
important outcome if we rely on
Right.
it. If we rely on it, if we commit to relying on it, then that means we're actually going to use the answer.
Sure.
We could just go through this whole exercise and still get at the end and say, I still don't like what the answer is, right? So that's something we have to all agree to, I think, that we're gonna
No,
actually
and I-
use this process.
Yeah,
rather than
and you
just-
need to know that scale, as I said, right? Because then you
Yeah.
would be able to understand what alternative ranked or what because of the scale.
It's like the question on established technology, the number of installations. Well, that's
Right.
okay. I don't know, is it more than 1,000? I don't know if 1,000 good is 10,000 good, but when is kind of even more important. How often? How, like, more recency? Like, if you did a bunch of this 10 years, 2 decades ago, and you're not doing any now,
Yeah, and so,
recency actually has more impact to me, because that means people are using it still versus they used it a lot and they found out, oh, it's not any good anymore, right? See what I mean?
right, and so that's why we would be looking at the recent area. So maybe in the description, we need to add the
I
time
think so,
on it.
right? About, yeah. Sooner, more recent is better than more
That's good.
2 decades ago, right? Things like that, I think, will help kind of leave some breadcrumbs of how to go through this.
To try to maybe frame this a little bit, I struggled with established technology myself. The only way I could come up with something that we could all share and understand is to write, as described in 30 TAC, Chapter 217, Design Criteria for Wastewater Systems, so that we know we can go to a specific page, look at these 4 alternatives. What's it using? What kind of technology? Is this the level of detail you want us to engage in?
It's up to you all to decide how much, and that's why I wanted to come. This is the process we just started. We just started working a month ago. So we are still in process of evaluating this. So I would like to.
If we have comments, we would send them via you.
Yeah, ultimately, this is obviously intended to be the definitions that you would utilize in
Yeah.
order to make the decisions
Right.
in the comparison worksheet. So
So we'll
nowhere on the
have six.
comparison, nowhere on the comparison worksheet does it
Yeah.
get into differentiating 3A from 3B, from
Uh-huh.
4B, from
Right.
all the others. It only stays at the upper criteria. It doesn't go into the sub-criteria.
Yep.
So if we need to scrub the sub-criteria and the depth and the descriptions to be more clear, I think that may be worth some effort. Ultimately, what we'll need to come out of this is and this is what I was gonna propose to the MUDs, is that after the end of this process, we have a specific sheet, comparison worksheet for each of the MUDs. Whether or not a MUD wants to, propose a specific director to take the lead on it and bring it back to the MUD, whether you want each of the 5 directors to dig into that level of detail and fill this out and then collectively come to one. There's some different ways probably to do that. I think it's more cumbersome to come back to us with 50 of these
Right.
to burden the program. So that would be my suggestion. But to your point, I mean, if there's some further description, definition, or clarification on the definitions or the descriptions of what you're being asked to compare, again, you're comparing parent criteria, not the sub-criteria, not the A, B, C, Ds.
But it uses a sub-criteria
does.
to score,
Correct.
so.
That's correct.
I'm just doing a ranking of the
Sure.
main criteria. I'm not doing a weighting.
Sure.
Right? All the main criteria are weighted the same, but it's ranked first versus seventh in this case, right?
Right. That's correct.
So these
Yeah, is
details,
operability more important to you than treatment effectiveness?
and that gets into the weighting of these then do matter how I'm thinking about it and how the words kind of are put together. That's where I was
Absolutely.
thinking, right? And some of them cross over. You've got a kind of a regulatory thing that says, does the alternative meet the chapter 217 in 2? But then that also shows up down below in the third one. Would the alternative require TCQ variance to meet the permit? Those two are kind of Ike and Mike, I think. But they're two different criteria. So 2A versus
We throw the same thing here.
2A versus 3D.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same difference.
Well, the two A was more about the existing 217, going into detail as trustee Gaynor mentioned about how you would look at each of the processes at 217, chapter 217, and see if they meet it. And for the 3B, it's more about the variances, because this could be just yes or no kind of answer, whether you may need a variance or not. But the other one is going to be more detailed in terms of the pilot required, whether pilot is not required, but a full-scale system allowed or not, things like that, things of that nature. Because if it's a brand new system, would you require a pilot, for example? Because in certain cases, TCQ does require certain processes to be piloted before they're constructed or designed full-scale.
Is that even under consideration though in the full alternatives? No, neither of the full alternatives would require a pilot.
No, in certain cases, in terms of the MBR, you're right, we wouldn't, but there are best case scenario, best business practices, I would say, that may require. And that's a decision. It adds cost to you for sure. So that's what you need to decide whether you will do it or not. So we can tweak those criteria. As you mentioned, we can simplify them, 2A and 3B, to make sure that there is no confusion between the two.
How is cost integrated into this model?
So the cost is the last criteria, the life cycle cost.
Why is it last? Shouldn't it be
It's
first?
just a 7.
It's just the number of 7.
You can
So
make it.
1, 2, 3, 4. I can make that number 1. It doesn't matter.
And you can say that's the most important one. You can make that the most important one through your evaluation of the little.
No, I just think it's interesting that it ended up as the bottom instead of the top.
It's just 6.
It's just how it numbered, sir, but I can definitely make that the number 1.
Let's make it number 1.
I don't think it needs to be number one. Just leave it one.
It just doesn't matter.
I'm just-
This order doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
Because when you
I
pair it,
understand.
you
I'm just
will,
making a point.
when you pair it,
Well, I
you
think
will
safety
be
is
able to
way
say.
The 10% safety seems horrible to me.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would say 10% safety on your very first one is, where I came from, that would never, you'd never build it, right?
You're moving explosives.
And it's tied also to security, which are,
Dual time is accident time.
but when you do the comparison criteria, how does that go into the model? Ultimately, he has to convert that to a weighting for the 7.
So once you pair it, is that your question? Once you answer the form? So let me show you. It would go in a spreadsheet on a model similar to this, where we would take each of your responses, the number of forms we get, put what the answers are, and can come up with, the model would come up with the average, mean, and median weight for each of the criteria. So I'm sorry, I don't have a pointer, but if you see in this example,
Okay, so average for this group,
average for this group.
those are actually the weights that go into the model.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so they do convert the comparatives into weights.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's
You get
where-
to waiting eventually, yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
I have a question on, 2 questions on the timetable for this to be submitted and for these results to be figured out. What is that?
Yeah, we're looking to have the completed forms, the comparison worksheet, ideally to be prepared and ready to go to be presented to them in January timeframe.
Okay, and then they would be able to process the information quickly.
Well, I think my understanding is the evaluation of the 4 alternatives won't be done until what, second quarter?
Yeah, so that would be about May timeframe is when we.
Well, in May, we have re-elections.
No, we don't.
No,
Following year.
another year.
It's early.
Sorry.
Mira, a different, oh, go ahead.
I had one other, the groups, so I like that we all get to put input. I'm assuming we're going to have some kind of standardization of just MUDs or just stakeholders or every MUD representative. I mean, it's not going to be, say, my MUD has 1 sheet and MUD 1 has 7 inputs. I mean, it has to be structured.
What I
Right?
had mentioned earlier is each mode would have one. That's right.
Okay, got it.
How you get around to that is, I think Eric's saying, may be up to you, but you're gonna turn in 1, right? You
Yeah,
could do
I
5.
don't think we dictate if a MUD wants everybody to join in and do their own and then you want to collate the result of that into one, I think that's fine. Versus, I think it's a little cumbersome to come up with 50 of them or more across all of the MUDs, but there's probably some directors that honestly don't want to get into this level of detail and trust another director to do a bit on behalf of the MUD and then the MUD prove it. I could see a lot of different variations of how you go through that step, but I think the goal is to have one final one per MUD in January.
But I think before you ask us to fill this out, you have to get our feedback on these.
Correct.
Yeah. Can I ask you a different kind of question on one of your criteria? So, like for C and D, it's gotta be yes, no, like, does the project actually work? Yes or no? If it's no, you don't have really a doable project. Like, is there adequate space available for this alternative, or does the alternative fit the existing layout? They're both they're similar, but if it's a no, then it's like, proceed to next step, which is don't build. Because you can't, it's not a doable alternative then. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the answers are not going to be just yes or no, and that's why maybe it will be helpful for me to send you all what that 1 to 5 scale looks like. Because what it could also mean, can we restructure certain areas, how easy it is at the existing site to move certain things to create a staging area, for example. It's not just going to be yes or no, it's the complexity and difficulty in potentially creating a staging
So
area.
that's a different question than what's written on the page.
Yes,
Is there
Yeah.
is there plenty of space versus is it tight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it can't, so our goal is not to give you a yes or no only where you are, you need to know, otherwise we can't rank or score the alternatives correctly. So we
Most
we
people
will
are
be
not gonna know
defining.
that.
I bet.
To evaluate, do we have enough space, or are we tight, or we got plenty of space? I challenge that any director knows whether we do or not, because they don't know what the process is.
Most of the directors are, a lot of them are not technical.
Yeah.
They're not engineers.
Sure.
So when you start
So-
talking about this, they,
Would they have a report with them when they're doing this evaluation? Where they would have information of layouts and various things.
When the evaluation is being done, yes, for sure.
So to answer the question, you would have their analysis in front of you while you're preparing the scoring.
There's scoring.
The scoring happens. Evaluation happens later. But for evaluation, yes, the layouts would be ready, but for scoring, for about the weight criteria, it's going to be difficult to get all that layouts out because we need this information in January.
My mistake.
But we will, would it help would the MUDs be looking or at the all MUD meeting, would they require or would want to see the scale for each of the sub criteria? Or do we give some examples and reword some of these criteria and tweak them based on the comments we received from you all?
Yeah, I think I'd like to hear the comments on the descriptions as noted. And then I guess dependent upon that, it might be helpful to know what that scoring looks like.
Okay.
I think those two things would assist directors to be able to fill out the comparison worksheet.
yeah, a PDF of the presentation would be good so we can blow it up on a bigger screen and we can read it.
Yeah,
Something like that.
we printed out the bigger versions, but we will also email you the original so you can do that and then also get this out to you as well. We'll do both. Yes. Well, that's what we passed out. Yeah. You didn't do, you should.
Can I ask you the question on your sensitivity? So I assume we get one page for each of the 7 criteria?
Yes. We can run the model instead of, this is a steady state format, right? For you all to look at it, might be better that we run the model so we can see we can move the marker on where the weight may be, that the discussion is from 0 to 100%, wherever the range may be. So you can see which alternative scores higher against that criteria.
So I think it's excellent that you've got a mechanism to do sensitivities. Do you also have a mechanism to address confidence limits and inputs? How do you do that?
Or in the model, you mean? The input, so the input is again the range. So for example, let's say, again, this is an example and we are still in process of working through this. So please bear with me. I do not have all the answers yet. For cost, if the range we would all agree with the scale, what that range is for each of the value of the scale, we could add that and based on the cost of each alternative that comes through, the model can automatically calculate which what the scoring of that alternative is against that criteria, if that makes sense.
Well, an example might be one alternative, you might have a very well-known cost, plus or minus 5%. Another alternative, you might be much more assumptions to go into it. So the cost would be plus or minus 25%. So when you start comparing those costs, you need to go to incorporate the confidence limits in your inputs.
I'll get back to you, sir, because I don't know that exactly how that incorporates in the model, but I will find out. Because I don't run the model myself. We have a technical team that does, but I'll find out for sure.
But you understand what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. our goal is when we do the cost analysis for each of the four alternatives, they would be at the same contingency level. So for example, if we should have an idea of what the cost is today in today's, so that it's apples to apples comparison and not apples to oranges for between each alternative. So not only contingency, but what the, let's say for concrete, what the concrete would be for alternative 1 should be the same for alternative 4. So there shouldn't be that much difference.
Your confidence in the price of the concrete will be the same for all alternatives. How much concrete you use, one could be very well defined and one could be less well.
Our goal is to be lay out the facility full as at a pre-engineering level.
Yeah.
So we should have pretty high confidence, same confidence level for each of the four alternatives. But to answer your question, I will get back to you about that.
Just one question. What was the name of the software again?
Um,
Criterion Decision something?
Criterion Decision Plus model.
Okay.
And there are various tools out there that does the same. We just have used this one for a long time and we feel comfortable with this. Any other questions?
I would, I guess, request on the description piece of this. If you have any comments, mark them up or send them to me and I'll get them collated and sent on, if you would.
Timeline,
Like when?
Give us a deadline.
What you want.
Well,
I mean,
December 1st.
probably a couple weeks,
Give us a deadline.
3 weeks.
You won't get it.
We'll do December first.
Right.
Fine.
December.
Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, that works. And then in the meantime, we'll start creating a scale so that way we can send it to you for your comments as well. And I apologize, the examples were different.
No,
That was
okay.
not the
You're-
intent, but I was trying to give you guys potentially what could hypothetically happen. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
That's Monday, so either first thing
Well,
Monday
Monday.
or the previous Friday, whatever.
Well,
Or on the weekend.
How about 5 o'clock Monday?
Don't want me.
5 PM Monday.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So
it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
are we gonna
Thank you, Ms. Victor.
talk to the MUDs about all MUD meeting and layout?
Yeah, I think based on what I heard tonight, just with some additional information that I think is needed and probably should be completed before we do an all MUDs. I think,
Yeah.
I guess I'll think about it, but what I would suggest is we probably have a preliminary discussion at the MUDs next week to kind of summarize what you've heard tonight. Plant the seed that there will be an all MUDs and that there's comments being made by the trustees up till December 1st. And once those things get clarified, then we'll come back to the MUDs with a proposed all MUDs date.
You think also like a January?
I hope not, but if we're gonna run, it's gonna be tight. And that probably, before, I don't want to get too close to Christmas. But again, as I mentioned earlier, there's quite a few MUDs that are proposing not to have their own meeting. That kind of set up.
You don't use it.
Then still do that. I think that'll still give a couple weeks after December 1st to come with everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you give the MUDs a heads up that
Yeah.
the week of the 9th, you're gonna try to have an all MUDs meeting.
Correct.
That would be good. Yes.
We will convey that next week.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Good discussion. We are now to agenda item number 10.
All right.
Consider an act on WWA representative for the GRP Review Committee.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson, please.
I was made aware and informed by Chris that we did have a resignation of Mike. I think we knew it was coming. But officially, we received the notification that Mike did make his resignation from the GRP committee seat. As you know, WWA does have a seat, which is to be appointed by the trustees. And so I sent out a note a couple of days ago to all of you, giving my yesterday, I guess, giving my thoughts on it. And so I guess first off, before I even go there, I do want to introduce the new Deputy General Manager of WWA, Kim Knight. She came to us from Southern Montgomery County MUD. Has been there for a few years as their general manager. And so happy to have Kim. She started last Monday, so we've been hot and heavy trying to get up to speed and on the various projects and the various things. And so we'll look forward to some great things in the future. Kim, do you want to say anything?
No, not much. I'm just glad to be here and to help support the Woodlands Water team in any way that I can. And then just thank you guys for the opportunity. So I'm looking forward to it. We've really dove into a lot last week and a half, so I have a lot to get updated on, and so just glad to be here. So thank you
Can you
guys.
give us a little background on your education and experience?
Sure. So I have a master's from Sam Houston State in public administration with the emphasis in emergency management. So I worked at Sanderson River Authority for about 18 years. Kind of.
Pardon me, what did you do?
So I worked my way up I started there. I worked for a law firm for about 6 or 7 years, and I went to the authority and I started as a receptionist. And I moved around from accounting to HR. I worked directly with our general manager and with our boards. And then I had an opportunity to come in and work at our GRP division. So I worked at the GRP division, helped them transition from construction to operations. And then an opportunity opened in our Highlands division as our Highlands division manager. And so I was down there for about 3 or 4 years. And so, and then had the opportunity to go to Southern Montgomery County MUD as the general manager to work on the utility side. So anyway.
Did you work for Rick Moffat or take his place?
I took Rick's place. I shadowed him for about 6 months before he retired. So yeah, so I'm not an engineer, but I've worked very closely with engineers too. I was really blessed. I had engineers take me under their wing and just I've had some great mentors along my journey. So I'm very, very blessed. Absolutely. So.
And Moffat is, who's Moffat?
The previous general manager of Southern Montgomery.
Oh, Southern Montgomery, okay.
He retired, but now he's on the GRP committee for east of I-45, right?
Is he the guy at the cowboy hat? The other guy.
He's the other guy.
Other guy.
He's the president. He's the president.
Okay, he's the president, okay.
He's a councilman as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about why you made the job changes?
Yeah, so just kind of looking for a new challenge, just another opportunity to grow. I had kind of topped out and this was an opportunity that I saw, and I saw the posting, and I did see that, engineering was, one of the criteria. I'm not an engineer, but everything else aligned. And so I just put myself out there, and I just was really, really lucky and blessed that Eric reached out, and we had a couple of conversations, and everything just seemed to align in a really good way. So anyway, but I'm really excited to be here and look forward to getting to know each of you and supporting the team as best I can.
Great.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So we had a pretty extensive discussion about some of my thoughts and philosophy on the GRP, the facility, the importance, in my opinion, to try to look to maximize that facility at no or less cost, ideally spreading the utilization of that facility. And so we're aligned on that. Also, being an employee, that I think allows us some stability and longevity in the position to be able to represent WWA for years to come. So for those reasons, I would make a recommendation to appoint Kim to that position to replace Mike.
Okay.
I move that we
No, not moving anything yet. I'd like to nominate Brad Halk. to also.
Well, nominations weren't open yet, but I will open
Well, I
them.
thought he was gonna close and vote.
Well, normally you have a nomination
And then a second.
and then a second and then a discussion if that's required, or a second nomination and a discussion. I'll leave it in your good hands.
We'll open the floor to nominations.
I'd like to.
Trustee,
I'd like to request that, we pause it and, bring it back to the MUDs to discuss it. We have two people. So why don't we bring it back to our groups and discuss it and bring it back each month?
is that a motion?
Is there a nomination?
I didn't,
Nominations first,
yeah.
so.
So that
You can take
the individual MUDs aren't allowed to discuss it before the trustees make a decision.
Well, the decision is made by the Board of Trustees, but you know, you.
Well, I mean, the MUDs discuss it and give their vote of confidence for their trustee to then make a decision, right?
Well, not in every case.
So why not in this case?
Well, what he's asking is that the trustees ought to get the direction from each board to how to vote. And that each of these candidates ought to, and each, yeah, each of these.
I mean, I would like to take this back to my MUD and discuss the vacancy. And a matter of fact, we know we haven't had nominations yet, but if we nominate a new deputy director with Brad, they can come in and talk to each MUD and make their case.
I mean, it's unqualified, but I don't know why my MUD representatives wouldn't also want to talk about it. It's an important decision.
Especially since you're an alternate. So you,
I mean, I'm equally as qualified.
no,
Yeah, no,
but the point is that, you got.
Let's do one thing at a time. I'm getting the feeling that we're slightly off base here. Good point. I'm trying to think of it from an organizational standpoint. Do you have any direction as to, I mean, we do have
Yeah, I mean, we have,
a motion.
it hasn't been right, it has not been a really contentious nomination in the past. It's been Mike, so there hasn't really been this sort of discussion on this issue. It's one of first impression, let's put it that way. The trustees the trustees have the authority to make the appointment without going to the MUDs. As a courtesy for the budgeting process, we've had a more regimented process to go back to the MUDs, get direction. And I think that's what you're referring to. If you want to institute it, completely voluntary by the Board of Trustees. You don't have to do it. You're not obligated to. You can take your nominations, vote, and move on down the road. I don't know what impact there is on the committee, what the voting allocation is right now, and how a vacancy that would last for however long would impact the committee. That's something you may want to think about.
We know anything about that?
So I'll answer some of them. So there's 6 on the committee, including Woodlands Water. Mike has resigned, so Woodlands Water does not have any vote at any point right now. So December agenda is not finalized, but if there is something actionable, then y'all won't have a say. Majority does rule in any case. I know Rick Moffitt, that was discussed earlier, he's off next month. And in January, we seat 1 new member. And so until Woodlands Water sits, you will not have a vote. But there are some important votes coming up in the near term, including reserves, production of the facility, and other items. And one thing just to add is keep in mind, it is December. Sometimes the MUDs do cancel MUD meetings. And so therefore, if you do not discuss this and make a decision, it could be January and or February before y'all have a vote on the committee.
Yeah, we'd have to go to the MUDs this month. We'd have to have it on there this month and have direction to have a vote by the trustees next month. And when's the GRP committee meeting?
This month it's early, so it's actually before the trustees, December 9th.
Okay, so we're talking about one meeting, it sounds like. And are there any decision items?
The reserves, and there could be, City of Conroe still to be discussed, so.
Okay.
Many times the GRP meetings are canceled. Right? sporadic at times.
I'm just trying to get a
I'm
sense of what
understanding
the,
that.
what the potential exposure of a vacancy by having this process is. Not for any decision.
Hey, Rick, I mean, Chris, say Rick Moffat's, is he not gonna be on there after January? Or
No,
is he
his
just up
term
for
expired.
election?
He's up for election.
Okay,
let's
so
see,
he'll probably be there.
Right, so he chose not to run, and so his.
No, he's not gonna.
He's not gonna run. So those results will be sent out this week, next
Correct
week.
myself. No, it's not interim. It's just you have a term of,
Okay.
for a period of time.
But Rick Moffat's not gonna.
Would we be, would it be proper to have a vote here whether to take it to the MUDs or whether not to take it to the MUDs and then proceed with nomination? Well, we have nominations on the floor, so we've already began that process.
Has there ever been a non-WWA member been representing Woodlands? Like a MUD director?
Mike was the board.
No, it's always been
Since
mine.
acceptance.
Yeah, from inception, it's been mine.
Forever. So,
I
guess the answer to your question was yes, or no.
No, there isn't.
but I'll give you an example, Conroe City, one of their councilmen sits on the board. So they don't have a Conroe City employee sitting on the board. They have a councilman sitting on the board.
I'm just raising the difference between.
Yeah.
Suggestion, and then we can
Well,
decide what we're gonna.
we have nominations first and then we'll come to
Well,
that.
it's not really been a nomination put out there. There hadn't been a second on it.
There has not been a second,
Well, and
correct?
nominations don't require a second.
Oh,
So
okay.
nominations, you just make the nominations and then you have the vote.
Okay.
It's typical to how we do it, similar to how we do it for MUD, director positions or trustee positions.
You wish to offer a nomination?
I'll nominate Kim Wright.
We have two nominees. Further nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. Is there a motion to discuss?
Go ahead.
Is there?
No, but we discuss after.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on this matter?
I'd like to make a comment because when this project first started, I was intimately involved. In fact, I have a file this thick, but it's been my experience going to the meetings. I haven't been up there for 6 or 7 years, but watched a couple that the group desperately needs somebody that has worked in the private sector. And I'm talking about working for private profit-making organizations and understands economics. And I don't want to talk about the people that are up there, but basically, Brad, you can give everybody, you heard her background, and you can probably give everybody your background, but I think it's critical that somebody can look at a budget and ask intelligent questions. And from my attendance to those board meetings and seeing the quality of people, I think Brad would be a welcome addition for the whole group, not only for us, but could point people in the right direction. And so that's just my opinion. And like I say, I've spent probably half a dozen trips up there 6 or 8 years ago when I was trying to get the plant to produce 30 million gallons a day. And I'm proud to say that it did produce 23 million gallons a day back about a year after it opened. And then, of course, Conroe lawsuits and everything got to be a mess. But just from my experience and looking into people, I think Brad would be a welcome addition to not only represent us, but be able to make a statement, or not a statement, but be, a welcome presence for everybody about the whole process, not necessarily. Well, so that's just my opinion.
I think though that that position, that Mike held also it's a representative, a permanent employee of Woodlands Water. And Brad is not. Brad represents MUD 7. And his main role is to represent the constituents of Mud 7. You could also proceed to be down the road, let's say, and then a vote, there's a conflict of interest because you're talking about county-wide issues that that particular position deals with. And I think by having Kim on there, you have a person that knows how the process works there, has been part of it, but also represents Woodlands Water all 10 months. And that's why, and on top of that, Brad's position is a elected position, which means in 2 years from now, when's your term up? 26?
26.
Okay, we could be going through this whole process all over again. It's no difference if I threw my name in there, you know, I could be voted out. So then we're going through the whole thing all over again. You know, we've got a permanent employee that represents all of Woodlands Water.
I'd like to have Brad talk about his background before we.
Okay, let me first respond to some of your comments. I'm a little bit surprised that you would think I would only represent Mud 7 and I wouldn't represent this group as in its entirety. If I go accept this appointed to the position, I can assure you I would represent the WIA and the trustees. I would not be going as a Mud 7 director. I would be going as a representative of this body. Okay, I would ask you to trust me to do that. Okay, a little bit about my background. First elected Mud director in 2022. This year, moved into the president of Mud 7 and joined this group as a trustee. Chemical engineer from Georgia Tech. Spent a lot of years at ExxonMobil. Retired in 2021 as a senior technical executive. Had my PE. I did go inactive when I retired, but I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Texas. For most of my career, I rose into management of technical items and activities, managed the deployment, sustainment, and deployment of technology, mainly looking at automation and optimization technologies, very involved in planning, scheduling, budget analysis, cost benefit analysis, very solid technical background. My concerns going into this, why I agreed to be considered for this, is very, very strong interest in a county-wide solution related to the best utilization of that public resource, meaning the pipeline and the water plant. The county is in a particularly bad place right now where we're seeing development limited by lack of water. People are talking about building new wells. At the same time, we're not in a position to take advantage of a plant that could run twice what is currently running. I think that's a failure of leadership among the GRP and the River Authority. I would work to try to change that, evaluate what alternatives are there, and see if we can get that plant back up to full capacity and continue to minimize water, groundwater use in the county. Okay.
You know, I attended up to about a year ago all the GLP meetings. I read the budgets. I look at the GLP minutes. I look at these assessments they gave, and you know, we're running a plant at less than half capacity. I mean, and we have a very contentious 12 years or so with the GRP, and the people on the board typically are elected individuals. They're elected individuals, and they tend to be non-technical. And if you look at this asset, this is a very large, complex technical asset, you know, in which the culture of the SGRA is probably a lack of understanding from a business standpoint, from a for-profit making. In this business, it's for-profit making, but it all comes back to us. They're underutilizing this asset. And as I sit through these GRP meetings, you know, you can really see there's a lack of understanding of how to run a capital asset that is below capacity. And in the end, the community has to come together to address that issue, other than in the court. And I think we're very lucky to have someone with Brad's technical background and life experiences to add to that discussion. And it needs to be added. I mean, it needs to be added to that discussion. And I think, like I said, I think we're lucky to have Brad stand up and volunteer for this job, and I hope always support it, and I think it will be a very big additive plus to that board to have his skill set, because not much you look at, when you talk about managing a technical asset as large as that plant is, you really have to know, how things generally work, the pumps, the valves, the adhesion and membranes, and I think Brad comes with that experience. He's not an administrative type. He's a technical type, and the problems with that plant are technical, and they need to be solved. We're all paying very heavily for the lack of that plant running at capacity. And it needs to get beyond the discussion we've had, in the recent X years. So like I said, I'm very glad that Brad volunteered. I think him being he's one of the trustees. He's our guy. And, I don't think it's any advantage to having the same person for the last 10 years. I think at times you need a different set of eyes, a different set of life experiences. And I want to stress life experiences that bring a technical background, that he understands how that technical asset is supposed to be run. I think Brad will do that.
I might also add that there's no difference in me being elected and being on the board compared to the Conroe council person who's also an elected official, subject to reelection. Okay.
He could actually be appointed to the board by us, even if he wasn't a bud director, I think. Because I'm not sure exactly, does it have to be appointed by the trustees? Or could if he was just trustees?
Right. Not being on the board doesn't disqualify you.
Okay, so he could not be on the board and still be a representative.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I need to make point, but is it allowed to bring this back to the minutes, or is that?
Well, we're gonna conclude discussion,
Okay.
and then we're gonna have this other motion. If someone makes that motion, we'll talk about that, okay, Sean?
Got a few
Yes, sir.
questions. How long is this appointment for?
4 years.
Right now it's an interim appointment. Well, not interim. It's a partial term appointment because the most recent term began in January of 23 and runs through January of 27.
Who are the other members of the committee?
GRP. It's a brain teaser.
No, just trying to get them in order. Harry Hardman, council member from the city of Conroe, and to just throw this out there. Conroe initially had their director of public works as their appointee. So it's only recently, say like the last, 4 years, 5 years, that they've had a council member as a representative. There's James Korn, who's the director of public works. He represents the small cities or the cities other than Conroe. There's Rick Moffett, who represents the MUDs east of I-45. That will now be Paul Slotnick. And I think he's in MUD 89.
Benjamin Slotnick.
Benjamin.
Possibly 94.
He's in one of the MUDs on the east side.
What's his position in that MUD?
He's one of the board members.
Board member.
He's a MUD member. He's elected.
Okay, thank you.
Then there's the WWA position, Jackie Chance, who is the general manager for the WCID #1. He represents all the MUDs west of I-45. And then Mike Stecker, who is appointed by the Lone Star Board, and he represents the investor-owned utility.
Is he on the board? Lone Star?
No, sir. He is not.
And what's his background?
He's a developer,
Oh, he's developing.
and he has owned investor-owned utilities in the past.
And all these constituencies are members of the GRP and
Yes.
take water and contracts with.
Yes.
Let me make one comment. Jackie Chance he's a longtime operator, right? He's a general manager of the MUD. But he made a comment one day when I was up there and pushing for increasing the capacity. And he made the comment, if we double the increase of the plant, we would suck Lake Conroe dry. Now, this was a comment made by one of the GRP members. And that's why, It concerns me that that comment alone from him, and this was 7 or 8 years ago when I was up there, but you ask who was on the GRP committee, and if you wanted the plant to produce 30 million gallons a day, I don't know what his opinion is today, but he made that public comment. So
So what does that mean? I mean, that's
well,
nothing
it means
to
that,
this at all.
you know, even Eric in his email says is that they want to work to get the plant to.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with the two nominations that we're talking about.
Sure it does, because if we get a person up there that will commit, Brad's already said that he's committed to try to get the plant production up for everybody. And so you've got one vote against it apparently already on the board. And so anyway, that's my only comment, that why I think it's critical that you get people, or some people that have a technical background and understand economics. And
Yeah,
Brad, have you attended any
meetings?
meetings?
Him on there with the title of assistant general manager. I think it shows the importance that Woodlands Water and trustees placed upon assigning someone to be on the GRP.
I appreciate you, volunteering to do that. Have you attended any of the GRP meetings
I've
yet?
attended one in the past.
Have a sense of what's going on?
Yeah, a little bit. Even though I retired in 2021, had some downtime, attended some of the meetings after I got elected to Mud 7. Then I went back to some consulting. I've been pretty busy the last 14 months. My consulting engagement is ending this month, so that'll free up my time. So I can make a pretty strong commitment to making time available for this activity. Okay. And I do encourage you to think about the impact of having some independent voice representing us as a body of trustees. As you know, I have no ties, no commitment, no bias to the River Authority or the GRP. So.
Do you have anything to add other than what you put in your memo?
No, I think good points have been made by everyone in the room tonight. I gave my recommendation. I think it, and I appreciate everything that's been said about the technical aspect of it. I think what I'm hearing from everybody is we all share the same end goal. And that's what I like to hear. I think we all want to, our representative to be able to push that committee to find ways, as I said in my email, to think outside the box, try to identify ways to maximize the utilization of that facility with no additional costs or lowering the cost of the facility. So I think that there's a little bit of risk when contemplating an elected official and having to go through this process, multiple times throughout the years. If elections change things, I think that is a risk from longevity. But at the same time, I don't disagree that new eyes should look at it from time to time as well. So
That's right. Do you have anything more to add on your behalf?
I think, I recognize the importance of the plant. I also recognize that the intent of the plant was for long-term water supply, I think we do need to protect our aquifers as best we can. It would be great to identify some additional participants potentially to utilize the plant more so. And while also, minimizing any impact to the existing participants with costs. So yes, we do need to utilize the plant more so. Again, it's just identifying ways that it can be utilized, and keeping an open mind and thinking, of other options that we have, and but at the same time protecting the participants that we have and the cost associated with running the plant. So anyway.
Could you expand a little bit? You said you worked with the GRP. When was what was the time frame?
Yeah, so I was actually there in a whole different role at the inception of the GRP program when all the public meetings and the joint water resource assessment planning was occurring. I worked kind of in an admin role, attended the meetings with the GM to have the public meetings and all of that. But I did not go to work for the GRP until it was transitioning from construction to operations. So that's when I went to work for the GRP.
From startup to when, was that your last position before you went down to South Montgomery?
Yes, sir. Yeah, so I was there about 3 years, and so just helped with the, policies, procedures, and getting everything in place for operations of the.
So you weren't there after startup?
Yes, sir. I was briefly. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then you went to the Highlands Division, correct?
Yes, sir, I did, yeah. And over the years, I mean, I have been really involved in the budgeting process. I've been involved in the capital, the CIP planning process, identifying those projects, working very closely with our engineers and with our staff and stuff to define projects that feed into those CIPs and managing the budgets, developing the budgets. So anyway, but it's absolutely, so
Thank you.
very broad knowledge base.
Thank you.
So you're welcome.
Closed discussion. Oh, one more.
Question. I keep hearing a discussion about an email that you sent out. I didn't get.
Yesterday.
Today. Jeff came from Shell.
Sure, yeah.
Oh,
So related to that, Eric, I wish if you were going to make a recommendation, you would have allowed me to talk to you, to present a case to be considered. I feel like
Members that had approached me, and there actually are other board members that have approached me. You didn't until you requested the agenda item to be done. I would have appreciated that as well. I had a time prior to a couple days before the meeting, because I would like to understand what your goals and mission would be and your interests as well. So I didn't know that going in. It's the first time I've heard of it tonight. So I would have appreciated
I
that.
told you last week,
I understand.
and you said your response was, I have a recommendation. I'm going to go forward with my
I'll be
recommendation.
presenting to,
Okay. So you didn't say, just come by and let's talk. Let's understand what your qualifications are. Your mind was already made up.
Didn't get the email from
Did it come out
from
today?
Shelley.
I have it now.
What time is it? What day?
Came out at 5:42
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
5:42.
Today.
Tuesday.
No, Tuesday.
That's my day.
So everybody else.
But it wasn't in the package. The package was presented with a blank name in it.
My email was not in the package.
No, but what was in the package had a blank in there.
That's just the document that we need to fill out once the trustees make their decision. That's all it is. That's a form document that we need to fill out once the trustees make theirs.
Okay, let's
I'll
close
say,
the session.
based upon what Eric has said, and I'll just add this to the process.
Guess we're not gonna.
That
close this
we
one.
may need, like John said, to delay this a month. We could put it in the agenda for the much discussed, and Brad and Eric can talk. And they can get to know, his qualifications and his thought process, and that way we can all feel a little more comfortable, and we'll discuss it over months. They can come by and present, kind of like an interview for the job. What I'm saying is, it's an important assignment. And we can get guidance. And really have more transparency than we have now.
Yes, sir.
I mean, they both sound like nice people, but I met her today, and I've seen Brad once before today. So I think I owe my MUD due diligence to hopefully bring it back to them and discuss it if allowed.
And we close the discussion on this item, and then we'll have the motion that I believe you want to make. I'll be most happy to receive that. Thank you, sir. We close discussion. Is there any new motions that are going to be brought before the?
Yeah.
Now you're.
Well, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to allow the MUDs to discuss this.
Table motion.
Okay.
I think.
Motion to table the nominations until the nominations have been discussed at the MUD level. Retake it up at the December meeting.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. We'll take, vote as to bringing it back to the MUDs or tabling the motion and bringing it back to the MUDs
Table the nominations.
the table the nomination, excuse me, and have the MUD discussions. Okay? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Roll call vote.
Okay.
You had one opposed.
One opposed? Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. Very good. Very good. The motion passes. So the nomination is tabled and we'll bring it back to the MUDs for discussion. And then we'll revisit the matter, the nomination
December trustee meeting.
in January, December.
December trustee meeting.
Are we going to have it there? I guess that's one of the items that we're going to talk about. Are we going to have them?
Yeah, I think we've typically done the trustee meeting, just not the MUDs.
No, the MUDs. Well, I
The
guess,
MUDs will consider this next week.
okay.
Yeah.
It'll be in the pack. We need to have it, it'll be on an agenda item then, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Next week. Okay, for the next week.
Correct.
Very good.
So what was the final vote?
9-1 apparently.
One?
Yeah. Yeah. Just to table it and bring it back for MUD discussion.
And I would like to have a meeting with, not that it needs to be voted on, but, I'll reach out to Brad and we'll sit down and get a better understanding of what his goals are.
Is there some expectation that the mud packets will have like the bios or some information on each candidate that's been nominated, that we can actually have a good discussion rather than?
I thought we were invited to come and talk.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't know that was part of the plan.
You can do both.
I mean, I think everyone would like to have something prior to, if you can. I mean, we got a couple days before the mud packets go out.
I'll check rest of it.
Yeah, it's quick.
Well, it's just a suggestion. It doesn't have to be followed.
Thanks, great idea, you.
Yeah, I think so.
If it can be done. Yeah.
We will try.
There we go. Very good. Okay. Where are we? Lost my agenda. Okay.
12.
Agenda
Hey,
item
but
12.
the Quadvest case, why don't you brief us on that? But can Ed speak to it now?
I can speak to the decision made by the federal court, and the federal court agreed with us in the sense that Quadvest, their claim that we created a monopoly for water supply in Montgomery County is false, and the judge agreed with that. And Quadvest is considering appealing that to the Fifth Circuit, but we haven't heard officially whether they're going to do that yet.
Further,
Nothing else.
nothing else? Thank you, sir. General Manager's report, Mr. Peterson.
Nothing additional for me.
Additional for you. Okay. Ad hoc committee reports. Personnel Committee did not meet since our last meeting. We're going to recess to close session and discuss a personnel matter this evening. Audit and Finance Committee, Ron?
No meeting, we'll be reviewing the audit first part of January.
Okay, Public Education, Neil?
Yes, we met today. We received a detailed analysis of the survey. It recently went out to the community. Reviewed the website visits, infrastructure renewal website visits for October. The good news is 80 new signups from the website for the Woodlands Water Agency emails. Arose from those visits. We recommended updates to ensure consistency on project information for messaging on the website. We agreed to that. The community working group membership is nearly complete. The group will hold its kickoff meeting on December 2nd at the Woodlands Township meeting room 105. And then after this meeting, the results of the survey will be publicized. So everyone can see what people think about water or the infrastructure renewal questions. Thank you.
Neil, on that matter, are you sending it to all the MUDs? Will they be in their MUD packets?
I will provide it to Shelley as always.
So the idea is it's going to go to all the,
Oh,
all the
everyone's gonna see it.
okay, I just want to make sure.
Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you.
But only after community advisory group meets on December the 2nd. Because they're gonna be discussing.
Okay, at this time, any further discussion? Pardon me for.
Questions. So has the community group met?
No, I said the kickoff meeting is on December the 2nd.
So so December 2nd, here upstairs?
Oh, no, at the Woodlands.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
It's township.
Township. Are you going to address the township?
No,
It's in.
Meeting is in their room.
Yeah, it's the advisory group will meet using township.
Township
facility.
facilities.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand now. Okay. December 2nd. What time?
11:30
to 1.
1.
30 a.m. to 1 p.m. in their meeting, in their boardroom?
We'll be covering it all.
Yeah, it'll be.
You'll all get a report on that. I'll report on the specific date and time for everybody.
Okay, it is now straight up 8 o'clock. We will recess to closed session to discuss personnel matter.